Gilligan's Island, the little show that accidentally became a TV legend. Some television shows are remembered. And then there are television shows that somehow become part of culture. Gilligan's Island falls firmly into the second category. Even people who have never watched the show usually know the premise. 7 castaways, a tiny boat, a storm, and suddenly, a simple sightseeing trip becomes one of the longest vacations in television history. But what makes Gilligan's Island fascinating is that the show actually only ran 3 seasons. Just 3. Yet decades later, the characters, the theme song, and even the boat are still instantly recognizable. So today, we're taking a deep dive into how this strange little sitcom became one of the most famous shows ever made. And along the way, we'll uncover some of the odd behind-the-scenes facts that most viewers never knew. The 3-hour tour that never ended every episode begins the same way. A small charter boat called the SS Minnow leaves Honolulu for what is supposed to be a relaxing sightseeing cruise. The trip is supposed to last 3 hours. That's it. 3 hours. But a violent tropical storm appears out of nowhere. The boat is tossed across the ocean, the passengers lose control, and eventually the vessel crashes on the shore of an uncharted island. Suddenly, 7 strangers find themselves stranded with almost no supplies and no clear way home. And that simple premise is what carried the entire series. The boat that was named as a joke, even the name of the boat, had a hidden joke. The SS Minnow wasn't just a random name chosen by the writers. It was actually a reference to Newton Minnow, a former chairman of the FCC who once famously described television programming as a vast wasteland. The creators of the show apparently had a sense of humor. Naming the doomed boat after him was a playful jab at television critics. Meet the Castaways. The success of Gilligan's Island came from its characters. Each castaway represented a very specific personality type. First, there's Gilligan himself, the bumbling first mate who means well but constantly creates chaos. His boss is the skipper, Captain Jonas Grumby, a gruff but dependable leader who spends most of his time yelling Gilligan's name. Then there's the professor, a brilliant scientist capable of building almost anything from coconuts and bamboo. Marianne Summers represents the wholesome girl next door. Ginger Grant is a glamorous Hollywood movie star, stranded far away from cameras and red carpets. And finally, there are the wealthy passengers, Thurston Howell III and his wife Lovey Howell, who somehow maintain upper-class habits even while stranded on an island. 7 completely different personalities. Which is exactly why the show worked. The professor could build everything except a boat. One of the funniest running jokes in the series involved the professor. The man was a scientific genius. He could build radios, power generators, and complicated devices using materials found on the island. Bamboo, coconuts, vines. But somehow he could never repair the one thing that would actually solve the problem. The boat. Fans have joked about this contradiction for decades. How can someone invent a radio from coconuts but not patch a hole in a boat? The answer, of course, is simple. If they fixed the boat, the show would end. The theme song that told the whole story. One of the most memorable parts of the series is the theme song. Unlike most sitcom themes, the Gilligan's Island song actually explains the entire premise of the show. In less than a minute, viewers learn about the 3-hour tour, the storm, and the stranded passengers. Originally, the theme only mentioned a few characters by name. Marianne and the professor were simply referred to as "and the rest." Fans complained almost immediately. So the producers changed the lyrics in later seasons to include them. It's a small detail, but it shows how quickly audiences connected with the characters. A show that became bigger after Cancellation. When the show premiered in 1964, the ratings were only modest. During its original run, it was considered moderately successful. But once the show entered syndication, everything changed. Local television stations replayed the episodes constantly. Kids discovered it after school. Families watched it together, and suddenly Gilligan's Island became a massive hit. Ironically, the show became far more famous after it was cancelled. The Marianne versus Ginger debate, one of the longest-running debates in television history, actually came from this show. Fans endlessly argued about which character they preferred, Marianne or Ginger. Marianne represented sweetness and innocence. Ginger represented glamour and Hollywood sophistication. The debate became so famous that even today people still reference it. And it all started on a tiny sitcom set on a tropical island. Why the show was canceled despite growing popularity? CBS canceled the show after its third season in 1967. The cancellation surprised many viewers. Network executives had originally planned to renew it, but the network decided to change its programming strategy. So, Gilligan's Island quietly disappeared from the schedule. The castaways were still stranded, and there was no final escape episode. The movies that finally let them escape because the show became so popular in reruns, producers eventually created several television movies. These movies reunited the cast and finally allowed the characters to escape the island. But in typical sitcom fashion, they eventually ended up stranded again. Because being stuck on the island was the entire point. The real secret of the show, the brilliance of Gilligan's Island, wasn't complicated storytelling. It was simplicity. The characters were easy to understand, the setting was recognizable, and the conflict was always the same. Trying to escape, failing, and trying again next week. That formula allowed the writers to explore endless story ideas. Why the show still works today, part of the charm of the show, is that it never took itself seriously. The writers embraced the absurdity of the premise. Of course, the professor could invent a battery from coconuts. Of course, rescue attempts would fail at the last second. And of course, Gilligan would accidentally ruin every plan. The humor came from watching the same situation unfold again and again. Final thoughts: it's amazing to think that a show which lasted only 3 seasons could leave such a lasting impression. But sometimes the simplest ideas are the most powerful. A tiny boat. A tropical island. 7 unforgettable characters. And a 3-hour tour that turned into one of television's longest